In the borderlands between Cambodia and Vietnam, the jungle remembers what history tried to erase. Beneath the thick canopy where the air tastes of rain and gunpowder, a secret war unfolded. A war without borders, without mercy, without witnesses. It began as an echo of Vietnam's struggle, but became something darker, a theater of shadows where truth was a casualty and silence the only survivor. The Ho Chi Minh Trail carved through the mountains like a hidden vein, feeding the Vietnamese war machine with supplies and soldiers. American bombers followed, dropping fire on unseen enemies, and Cambodia's forests became graveyards of craters. The Khmer Rouge rose from that chaos, born of rage and ruin, their black-clad ranks emerging from the ashes of villages caught between two wars. Soldiers vanished into bamboo groves, governments denied what they knew, and the Mekong ran red for years while the world looked elsewhere. This was not the Vietnam War or the Cambodian Civil War. It was both and neither, a conflict fought in silence by nations bound in blood and fear. The jungle began as a green ocean, dense and unbroken, swallowing everything in its path. It had been there long before the first Khmer Kingdom, long before French colonizers drew lines on maps, and it would remain long after men and armies faded into memory. Bamboo grew like spears, interlacing overhead to block the sun, and under the canopy, darkness reigned even at midday. Every leaf seemed to whisper secrets of soldiers who vanished without a trace, of villagers dragged from their homes, of the bombs that fell from the sky in silence, leaving only craters and smoke. This was the Cambodian-Vietnamese border, but to those who fought here, national lines meant nothing. The forest cared only for the rhythm of rain, the swell of the river, the rustle of unseen creatures. In 1965, as the Vietnam War intensified, American planes streaked over Cambodian skies. Cambodia was officially neutral, but neutrality was a thin veneer. Beneath it, trails fed the Vietnamese army, paths carved through hills, across rivers, through bamboo that hid the movement of troops and weapons. Every step was calculated, every bend in the trail might conceal death. Vietnamese engineers laid roads invisible from the air, while American reconnaissance planes scanned endlessly. Yet the jungle always seemed one step ahead. Soldiers learned to trust the shadows. Local villagers became guides, sometimes willingly, sometimes coerced, but all were witnesses to the slow erasure of their land. Homes disappeared, rice paddies became trenches, and the river carried messages that no one dared speak aloud. The Khmer Rouge moved like ghosts. They did not follow conventional rules of war. They struck in silence, vanished in the mist, and left bodies as riddles to the living. Sometimes they appeared as villagers carrying baskets, sometimes as children running through the fields. Their black uniforms merged with the shadows, and their eyes, cold and calculating, saw the world only as a battlefield. For the Vietnamese army, the border was a double-edged knife. They pursued the enemy while trying not to provoke the Cambodians into open conflict. Missteps meant death, and mistakes were written in blood. Villagers learned quickly how to survive. Children ran barefoot through bamboo thickets, carrying messages from one hiding place to another. Mothers waded into muddy rivers to bury rice, and men dug shallow trenches, never certain if the next day would bring soldiers or shell fire. Life adapted to the rhythm of the secret war. Every harvest was a negotiation with fear. Every festival, a brief respite in a world dominated by shadows. Temples, once places of worship and calm, became shelters and command posts. Their stone walls absorbed echoes of whispered strategies, broken vows and cries that no one would record in history books. The Ho Chi Minh Trail snaked through Cambodia's eastern provinces like an artery of war. Supplies, weapons and men flowed south, invisible to the untrained eye, while American planes tried to bomb the jungle into submission. Yet for every target destroyed, a dozen more trails emerged, carved by machetes, blood, and sweat. The riverbanks became landing points for supplies under cover of darkness, and soldiers learned the jungle's rhythm. When to move, when to wait, when to listen to the silence. The jungle had its own memory, and it remembered all who walked upon it. By 1970, the American-led Cambodian incursions intensified. The secret war became public, but the casualties were never fully counted. Villages burned, forests were shredded by napalm and artillery. The Mekong carried corpses downstream like drifting leaves. Yet the soldiers persisted, the Khmer Rouge regrouped, and the Vietnamese continued to move along the hidden trails, as if the forest itself were conspiring to prolong the conflict. Each day was an endless cycle of ambushes, retreats, and disappearances. The line between life and death was a matter of timing, of knowing which bamboo thicket held a trap, which river bend hid enemy patrols, and which path might vanish under artillery fire. Amidst the chaos, human stories endured. Families hid in hollowed trees or shallow caves, learning to share rice and water with neighbors who might become friends or foes. A mother taught her child the names of plants that could cure fever or snakebite, while a father whispered directions to cross the river safely. Soldiers sometimes spared villagers, recognizing them as pawns in a game they could never fully control. Other times, the villagers were caught in indiscriminate attacks, their screams swallowed by the jungle, leaving only scorched earth as testimony. Every step through the forest was a negotiation with survival. Every dawn was a fragile gift. Planes continued to scream overhead, dropping bombs that turned once fertile land into craters. Villagers learned to read the sound of engines, the shadows of approaching aircraft, and the timing between blasts. Farmers hid in rivers, soldiers burrowed into mud, and the forest seemed to breathe with all of them. The Mekong became a silent witness, carrying debris, blood, and whispered prayers downstream. Bridges were blown, paths rerouted, and entire landscapes shifted under the violence. Yet the jungle endured, growing thicker, more treacherous, and more secretive with each attack. The Khmer Rouge exploited every shadow. Their tactics were simple but devastating. Ambush, disappear, reappear elsewhere. They turned the forests into a labyrinth of fear, where a misstep could mean death or capture. Vietnamese soldiers, despite training and determination, found themselves at the mercy of terrain that did not favor them. It was a war without honor in the conventional sense, fought in silence and secrecy, and remembered only in the scars of the living. By 1972, the secret war had left its imprint on the land. Villages were hollowed shells, rivers choked with debris, and every foot of jungle seemed to hold a story of death or survival. Yet life persisted. Children learned to fish in bombed-out streams, farmers coaxed rice from cratered paddies, and soldiers adapted to shadows. The borderlands were no longer just a line on a map. They were a living, breathing battlefield, constantly shifting, where history, memory, and survival intertwined in a dance with fate. In the quiet hours, when the plains no longer screamed and the wind rustled the bamboo, the jungle whispered its secrets. It spoke of vanished armies, of civilians who hid too long, of the Mekong carrying the stories of all who suffered. The forest was patient. It waited for the world to forget and for the truth to seep back slowly, like sunlight through thick foliage. And beneath it all, hidden trails carried the echoes of a war the world barely acknowledged, shaping the destinies of nations in silence. The Cambodian-Vietnamese border, jagged and treacherous, would remain haunted long after the last gunfire faded. Its rivers, hills, and bamboo groves held memories that no history book could fully contain. Every footstep along its secret trails was a testament to endurance, cunning, and fear. Every shadow could be friend or foe. Every heartbeat in the jungle was a small victory. And the jungle, indifferent and eternal, watched them all. The border remained a line in the jungle, jagged and elusive, where the earth itself seemed undecided about who it belonged to. After years of secret wars, the bamboo grew thicker, the rivers slower, the land quieter, but the shadows lingered. Villages that had survived the artillery and ambushes bore marks of both human and natural memory. Scarred trees, hollowed-out huts, sunken paths, and the occasional skeleton half buried in the soil. Every footprint could tell a story. Every bend of the Mekong carried whispers from the past. The war had ended, but the land was still haunted. The Khmer Rouge had vanished into the hills for now, leaving behind a society shaped by fear, secrecy, and loss. Vietnamese patrols moved cautiously along the border, wary of ambushes that might still lie in hidden trenches or camouflaged bunkers. The soldiers had seen too much to celebrate victory. They carried with them memories of those they could not save, of villages whose lives had been erased, of friends lost to the impenetrable shadows of the jungle. The borderlands had taught them a truth harsher than any battlefield. Survival was not enough to grant peace. Villagers emerged slowly from hiding, faces hollowed by years of terror, hands calloused from constant labor. Rice paddies were replanted, fish returned to once bombed rivers, and temples, though scarred, became centers of fragile rebirth. Rituals resumed in whispered tones, offerings to ancestors were made cautiously, as if disturbing the spirits too loudly might awaken them. Life returned, but it was forever altered. Children who had known nothing but fear now played in sun-dappled clearings, yet the echoes of past explosions lingered in their dreams. The Mekong, wide and indifferent, reflected their smiles, but carried the ghosts of the vanished downstream. Trade and communication between Cambodian and Vietnamese villages cautiously resumed. Cross-border marriages, once rare, began to bridge the scars left by conflict, yet suspicion remained. Every handshake, every shared meal carried the weight of memory. Local leaders worked quietly to rebuild trust, while veterans of the secret war wandered in silence, burdened by experiences that could not be spoken aloud. The border was no longer a battlefield in the conventional sense, but it remained a psychological frontier where loyalty, fear, and survival coexisted uneasily. Stories of the secret war passed through whispers. An old fisherman would tell his grandchildren about floating corpses drifting past the riverbanks, of fires that swallowed entire villages, of soldiers who appeared like shadows in the bamboo. A woman would describe how she hid in a hollow tree for days, listening to gunfire that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. These stories became part of the cultural memory, not celebrated or written into textbooks, but passed orally to preserve the truth. The land remembered, and its people could not forget. The environmental scars mirrored human suffering. Napalm had blackened the earth, artillery craters had turned fertile soil into ponds, and unexploded ordnance lay hidden beneath bamboo roots. Villagers learned to navigate carefully, using local knowledge passed down by those who had survived. Fields were replanted with caution, rivers crossed only at known safe points, and families moved in coordinated patterns to avoid lingering danger. Every return to normalcy was tentative, fragile, a negotiation between hope and fear. Yet there were also moments of quiet resilience. Farmers celebrated the first successful harvest after the war in hushed ceremonies. Children painted bright colors on temple walls that had once been scarred by bullets. Villagers fished together in the Mekong at dawn, sharing stories, rice, and laughter. The land slowly healed, but every shadow reminded them that peace was a fragile veneer. The forest, always patient, waited for the next human mistake to remind everyone who truly ruled this borderland. Political changes reshaped the region. Vietnam consolidated its presence in the border areas, while Cambodia struggled with internal instability. The Khmer Rouge returned in fits of violence, only to be pushed back by both Vietnamese forces and local militias. The border became a delicate balance of power where every move was measured, every gesture scrutinized. Maps were redrawn, soldiers redeployed, and civilians learned once again that their lives were secondary to the ambitions of nations. The Mekong remained indifferent, flowing silently between the two countries, a witness to everything, remembering every loss and every survival. In the shadows between the nations, memory became a battlefield of its own. Survivors carried trauma that no medicine could erase, while their children learned to navigate a world built on stories half told. Festivals, markets, and rituals resumed, yet they were haunted by what had passed. Every temple bell tolled in remembrance of lives lost, and every harvest prayer whispered for safety in a land that had learned violence too well. Even laughter was tempered by remembrance, a fragile dance between grief and hope. As decades passed, the world began to forget. Maps redrawn, borders secured, governments changed. The secret war became a footnote, a whispered history known only to survivors and the land itself. Yet beneath the surface, the Mekong carried the stories in its waters. Cracks in temple walls, bamboo groves, and scarred earth spoke to the persistence of memory. The human cost was never fully accounted for, but the lessons remained. That war does not end when guns are silent, that borders are never just lines on a map, and that survival carries its own weight of shadows. The borderlands between Cambodia and Vietnam remain a living testament to resilience and horror intertwined. Every tree, river, and path tells a story of men and women who endured, who hid, who fought, and who survived. They are reminders that history is not just written in books, but etched into the land, the people, and the air itself. Those who walk there today feel the weight of the past, the echoes of lost lives, and the quiet persistence of a jungle that has witnessed it all. And as the sun sets over the Mekong, casting long shadows across the fields and bamboo groves, the story of the secret war lingers. It lingers in the river's flow, in the quiet whisper of leaves, in the scars that refuse to fade. The borderland is no longer a battlefield in the open sense, but it remains alive with memory, a place where past and present coexist, where silence speaks louder than guns, and where the lessons of survival echo for generations. Until next time, stay safe and see you in the next history.